I never thought I'd come home to find my prize-winning roses reduced to mulch and my property line redrawn by an HOA I never even joined. But that's exactly what happened when Patricia Winters, the self-appointed queen of Maplewood Estates, decided my family farm was bringing down her precious property values. What she didn't know: before I took over my grandfather's farm, I spent 15 years as a real estate attorney in the city. And I still had all my contacts, my knowledge, and a stubborn streak a mile wide. You won't believe what happened when this power-hungry HOA president discovered she'd bulldozed the wrong farmer's land. This isn't just my story. It's a blueprint for how to fight back when your property rights are under attack. The sound of engines woke me at 5:30 a.m., big, heavy machines rumbling right outside my bedroom window. I jumped out of bed and ran to look. What I saw made my heart stop. 5 huge cement trucks lined up along the edge of my tomato field, men in hard hats already pouring gray concrete over my rich black soil. Soil that my grandpa, my dad, and I had worked for over 70 years. "Hey, stop that right now," I yelled, running outside in my worn flannel pajamas, not even stopping for shoes. The sharp gravel cut into my feet, but I didn't care. My land was being stolen, right in front of my eyes. A woman with perfect blonde hair stood next to the workers, holding a clipboard and wearing a bright blazer that looked like it cost more than my monthly farm earnings. Patricia Winters. She had moved into the fancy new Maplewood Estates next door just 8 months ago and immediately got herself elected as HOA president. "Oh, good morning, farmer," she said with a fake smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Beautiful day to improve the neighborhood, isn't it?" I could barely breathe. "What are you doing on my property?" "This is private land." Patricia's smile didn't falter. "Actually, this section falls under Maplewood Estates jurisdiction now. We need additional parking for our community pool opening next month." "That's impossible," I said, watching in horror as the concrete spread across what should have been this season's heirloom tomatoes. "My family has owned this entire 10 acres since 1951. She held out a document protected in a plastic sleeve. "The county approved our request last month. This quarter acre is officially HOA property now. See the signature right here?" She pointed to a line at the bottom. "I tried to notify you, but you never answer your phone or check your email." I hadn't checked either because I was busy working sunup to sundown, trying to make my small farm survive against the mega farms that were taking over everything. My neighbor Bill Johnson, who had lived in his house for 30 years before the HOA formed, walked over from his morning jog. "What's happening, Tom?" he asked. Before I could answer, Patricia jumped in. "We're finalizing the community improvement project that was in the newsletter. You voted for it last meeting, remember?" Bill looked confused. "I thought we were just adding some benches and flowers." "And additional parking," Patricia said smoothly. "It was all in the proposal." I noticed other neighbors gathering now, watching from the sidewalk. Some looked concerned, but nobody stepped forward to help. "This is theft," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "I never signed anything. I never agreed to this." Patricia's smile finally dropped. "Listen, your little hobby farm is bringing down property values for everyone. The board voted. It's done." She turned to the workers. "Continue, please." I ran back to my house, leaving muddy footprints across my porch. My hands shook as I called the police. When they arrived 20 minutes later, Patricia was ready with her paperwork. The young officer barely looked at it. "Seems like a civil matter, sir," he said, not meeting my eyes. "You'll need to take it up with the county." "But they're destroying my crops right now," I said, pointing to where the concrete had already covered nearly the entire quarter acre. "I can't stop legal construction with proper permits," the officer said. I noticed how he kept glancing at Patricia's fancy SUV with the county commissioner's parking pass hanging from the mirror. After the police left, Patricia walked over to me, now surrounded by 3 other HOA board members in expensive clothes. "Look," she said in a quieter voice, "this is progress. Your farm is." She looked around at my weathered barn and greenhouse. "Quaint, but it doesn't fit the neighborhood vision anymore. We're willing to make an offer on the rest of your property." One of the men with her, Frank Taylor, spoke up. "It's very generous. Above market value." I looked at them in disbelief. "This farm has been in my family for 3 generations. It's not for sale at any price." Patricia's smile turned cold. "That's unfortunate, because this is just the beginning. The HOA has lots of rules about appropriate land use, noise levels, proper fencing." She handed me a thick binder. "You'll find you're in violation of at least 2 dozen of them. That's $100 per violation per day." I watched them walk away, back to supervise as the last of my tomato field disappeared under concrete. My phone buzzed with a text from my daughter, who was away at college. "Dad, did you deposit the tuition money for next semester?" I looked at my farm, smaller now by a quarter acre, and felt sick. This wasn't just about land. This was my family's legacy, my income, my daughter's education. That night, I couldn't sleep. I spread out all the old property maps on the kitchen table. Yellowed papers my grandfather had kept carefully in his filing cabinet. According to these, there was no way that quarter acre belonged to anyone but me. I took photos of the maps with my phone, then started searching online for property lawyers. As I scrolled through names, a notification popped up from the local community Facebook group. Someone had posted pictures of the concrete pour, praising the HOA for finally cleaning up that eyesore farm edge. The comments were worse. About time. That farm smell was awful in summer. Property values will go up now. These were my neighbors, people who bought my fresh eggs and corn all summer. Just before midnight, my old friend Ray called. He'd been on the town council before retiring. "Tom, I just heard what happened. That HOA president is married to a developer who's been buying up all the land around the county. They're building a shopping mall next year. Your farm is right in the middle of where they want to put it." I thanked him and hung up, pieces falling into place. This wasn't about a parking lot. This was about forcing me to sell my entire farm. I looked out my window at the moonlight reflecting off the fresh concrete where my tomatoes should be growing. They thought I was just a simple farmer they could bully away, but they had made one huge mistake. They didn't know that before I took over the family farm, I had worked 15 years as a real estate attorney in the city. And I still had all my contacts, my knowledge, and a stubborn streak a mile wide. I picked up my phone and called Sam Harrington, the best property rights lawyer in the state. "Sam, it's Tom Wilson. I've got a battle on my hands, and I need your help to save my farm. And when we're done, I want to own every inch of that HOA that tried to steal from me." I couldn't sleep that night. How dare they pour concrete on my family's land? The next morning, I called the police again, but they said it was a civil matter and couldn't help. That's when I knew I was on my own. They can't just take land. My friend Mike said as we stared at the fresh concrete. "I know. There must be something fishy about their paperwork," I replied. I nodded, my hands shaking with anger. "I need to find proof first." I dug out my grandfather's old wooden chest from the attic. It smelled like dust and memories. Inside were yellowed papers showing the exact boundaries of our farm. According to these papers, that quarter acre was definitely mine. The county office was a maze of folders and tired workers. I spent 3 days there, going through dusty files while the clerk, Barbara, helped me search. "Look at this," she whispered on the third day, pointing to a document. The HOA filed for a special permit 6 months ago. They used really old maps from 1973. My heart raced. But those maps were wrong. They were fixed in 1974. Barbara nodded. "Exactly. Someone would have to know about both maps to pull this off." I hired Sam Harrington, a lawyer known for helping regular folks against big companies. His office was small but neat, with pictures of farms he'd saved covering the walls. "They're trying to steal your land," Sam said, his bushy eyebrows pulling together as he studied the papers, "and they're using dirty tricks to do it." Sam discovered that Patricia had secretly changed the maps before submitting them. "This is completely against the law," he said. "She cut off your corner and made it look like it belonged to the HOA all along." Meanwhile, things got worse at home. Every day, a new letter from the HOA appeared in my mailbox. $250 fine for improper agricultural equipment, $500 fine for keeping chickens, $750 fine for fence height violation. My neighbors started acting strange around me. Some wouldn't look me in the eye. Others crossed the street to avoid talking to me. Then my old friend Emma brought over a pie. "I'm sorry about what's happening," she said. "Patricia told everyone at the book club that your farm is bringing down house prices, and that soon the whole neighborhood will be worth nothing because of you." I was shocked. "That's not true." "I know," Emma replied, looking over her shoulder nervously. "But people are scared. Last month, the Miller family questioned her at a meeting, and suddenly they had fines for their basketball hoop, their mailbox color, even the type of flowers in their garden. I decided to attend the next HOA meeting. It was in the community center, a room packed with my neighbors sitting in neat rows. Patricia stood at the front in a crisp blue suit, her blonde hair pulled tight in a bun. "As you can see from these photos," she said, pointing to pictures of my farm, "this eyesore is damaging our beautiful community. Property values have dropped 15%. I stood up. That's not true. Everyone turned to look at me. Patricia's smile didn't reach her eyes. The farm was here before any of your houses, I continued. And I've checked, property values have actually gone up 7% this year. Patricia's face turned red. Well, if they have, it's despite your farm, not because of it. After the meeting, I noticed Frank Reynolds, the HOA treasurer, looking uncomfortable. Frank had always been kind to me, buying my fresh eggs every Saturday. I caught up with him in the parking lot. Frank, what's really going on? Why is Patricia so determined to take my land? He looked around nervously, then motioned me closer to his car. I shouldn't be telling you this, he whispered, but Patricia made a deal with Cornerstone Enterprises, that big developer. They want your whole property for a shopping mall. My stomach dropped. The whole farm? Frank nodded. She gets a huge commission if she delivers your property. That's why she started with that corner, to break your spirit. She's been dipping into the HOA emergency fund to pay for lawyers. That night, I watched from my kitchen window as Patricia hosted a fancy party in her backyard. The HOA board members were all there, drinking wine and laughing. I noticed how she touched their arms when she talked, how she leaned in close to whisper things that made them nod. I couldn't sleep again. The next morning, I visited my elderly neighbor, Mr. Johnson, who had lived here even longer than my family. I remember when your grandfather fought the county over those property lines, he said, his wrinkled hands wrapped around a mug of tea. They tried to say he didn't own that corner back in 1973, but he proved them wrong in 1974, got new maps made and everything. Do you still have any papers from then? I asked hopefully. Mr. Johnson shuffled to his garage and pulled out an old filing cabinet. I keep everything, he said proudly, handing me a folder. Inside was a newspaper article about my grandfather's victory, with a perfect quote from the judge stating that the corner belonged to our farm now and forever. I nearly cried with relief. When I showed the article to Sam, he grinned. This is exactly what we needed. Now we can prove Patricia knew about the correct maps and deliberately used the wrong ones. That afternoon, I was working in my greenhouse when a loud noise made me look up. A bulldozer was pushing toward my barn, with Patricia walking alongside it. I ran out, waving my arms. Stop! You can't do this. Patricia smiled coldly. Actually, according to our latest survey, this barn is 3 feet over the property line. It needs to come down. I stepped in front of the bulldozer. I have proof that you're using fake maps. I know about your deal with Cornerstone Enterprises. For just a second, Patricia's mask slipped, and I saw real fear in her eyes. Then she recovered, laughing sharply. You can't stop progress. By next month, this whole farm will be under concrete. The bulldozer driver looked confused. Should I keep going, ma'am? I pulled out my phone. Before you make that decision, you should know I'm recording this, and I have evidence of fraud. Do you want to be part of that lawsuit? The driver turned off his engine. I'm just doing my job, but I don't want legal trouble. Patricia's face twisted with anger. You'll regret this, she hissed at me. The HOA has more power than you can imagine. We'll bury you in so many legal fees you'll be begging to sell. As she stormed off, I noticed several neighbors had come out to watch. For the first time, they weren't looking at me with suspicion. They were looking at Patricia. I didn't know it then, but that confrontation was about to change everything. I had evidence of her lies, but I needed something bigger to stop her completely. And I was about to discover just how deep her corruption went. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw concrete pouring over my family's soil that my grandfather had tended with his bare hands. I got up at 4 a.m. and made a decision that would change everything. This ends now, I whispered to myself, looking at the photos of my parents and grandparents on the farmhouse wall. Their faces seemed to nod in approval. First thing Monday morning, I marched into the county courthouse and filed an emergency injunction to stop any more construction on my land. The clerk looked at me with sympathy as I showed her the photos of the concrete already poured. They did this without proper permits, I explained, my voice steady despite my racing heart. And I have proof they use fake property maps. What started as a simple property dispute taught me lessons I'll never forget. Standing up for what's rightfully yours isn't just about winning. It's about preserving the values that matter most. My grandfather used to say, land isn't just dirt, it's history, family, and future all rolled into one. He was right. This fight wasn't just about a quarter acre of tomatoes. It was about dignity, justice, and the principle that even the most powerful HOA can't trample on individual rights. When we allow bullies to take what isn't theirs, we don't just lose property, we lose something of ourselves. Throughout this ordeal, I discovered that community means something deeper than matching mailboxes and perfect lawns. True community is neighbors standing together against injustice, even when it's uncomfortable. Many of you watching might face similar battles, maybe not with an HOA, but with anyone who tries to take what rightfully belongs to you. Remember, document everything, know your legal rights, and never underestimate the power of persistence. Sometimes, the most important victories aren't won through force, but through knowledge, determination, and the courage to stand your ground. If my story resonated with you, you're not alone. Thousands of homeowners face similar battles every day across America. I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Have you ever had to stand up to an HOA or defend your property rights? What strategies worked for you? For those currently dealing with property disputes, remember that knowledge is your strongest weapon. I've put together a free resource guide with the top 5 documents you need to protect your property rights. The link is in the description below. If you found this story helpful, please hit that like button. It helps others find this information when they need it most. And if you know someone facing a similar situation, sharing this video might give them the courage and tools they need to fight back. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories and practical advice on protecting what's yours. I post new content every Wednesday that empowers homeowners to stand up for their rights. Remember, your property, your rights, your voice. I'll see you in the next video.